MSNBC is suffering a major community backlash for its coverage of Charlie Kirk's assassination. While Americans were waiting for news of whether the father of two was alive after being shot in the neck, the network ran these sorts of comments.
We don't know if this was a supporter shooting their gun off in celebration. You can't stop with these sort of awful thoughts you have and then saying these awful words and not expect awful actions to take place.
Matt.
And that's the unfortunate environment we're in.
Now, of course, the comments were an attempt to create a moral justification for why one might murder a man like Kirk. It wasn't the shooter who should be blamed, but the man who made an argument the shooter disagreed with. The network eventually did sack Matthew Dowd for his comments and released this statement from MSNBC President Rebecca Coulter. During our breaking news coverage of the shooting of Charlie Kirk, Matthew Dowd made comments that were inappropriate, insensitive, and unacceptable. We apologise for his statements, as has he. There is no place for violence in America, political or otherwise. We agree there is no place for political violence or violence of any kind. But do these journalists actually believe a word of that?
I just don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country, and maybe there will be.
People need to start taking to the streets. This is a dictator.
You know, there needs to be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives.
Enemies of the state.
Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
Do something about your dad's immigration practices, you feckless.
When they go low, we kick them.
How do you resist the temptation to run up and wring her neck?
The biggest terror threat in this country is white men, most of them radicalized up to the right.
I thought he should have punched him in the face. I said, even if you lost, he insulted your wife.
Yes.
He came down the escalator and called Mexicans rapists and murderers. He said, well, what do you think I should have done? I said, I think you should have punched him in the face and then gotten out of the race. You would have been a hero.
I'd like to punch him in the face. I said if we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
Punch some people in the face!
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
They're still going to have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump, and that's a fact.
Well, joining me to discuss the increasingly radicalised rhetoric of the so-called mainstream journalists is President of the Centre of the American Experiment, John Hinderaker. John, thank you so much for joining me. Unfortunately, it's under these circumstances, but I want to bring you into this situation at MSNBC. And obviously, Matthew Dowd has been sacked. The apology, from my perspective, was weak. And I think that it does nothing to pull the station back from its very long history of rhetoric and raising the temperature, which I think is just bad for America in general.
Well, Jack, let me just say, first of all, that Charlie Kirk was a friend of mine. It has been a very tough couple of days for many, many people here in the United States. You're right about MSNBC, Jack. I mean, this network has been far left for a long time. They have aired a lot of disgraceful commentary, and what Matthew Dowd said here, honestly, is what a lot of people have been saying in America. This has been a very common theme, especially on social media, that Charlie Kirk had it coming because he said things that we disagree with, and anything we disagree with is hate speech. And since Charlie Kirk engaged in hate speech, he deserved to get shot. When Matthew Dowd basically said that, he was echoing what many, many people on the left have been saying over the last couple of days.
No, well said. And I completely agree. This characterization of a mainstream conservative view and trying to equate that with hate speech, that is the type of language which begets violence, because you're setting somebody up as being somebody who's worthy of violence by having views that are beyond the pale. And I think journalists have been doing it for far too long, and it's incredibly irresponsible. But staying on this story, the backlash is actually so severe that people are calling for the broadcaster to lose its licence. They've compared the comments to endorsing terrorism, and they are targeting the advertisers. Now, John, MSNBC is in the middle of a rebrand, and they're going to try and move to something called MS Now, apologies. It's, I think, going to be rather difficult, because if I was an advertiser and somebody had shown me the track record that MSNBC has of effectively radicalising Americans against mainstream conservatives, why would you want to be involved in them? And there is one weapon, I think, that Republicans and conservatives do have in situations like this, and it is money. If advertisers do have a backlash, I think this is a tactic the left has deployed for far too long without the right being willing to do it. I think MSNBC, if its advertisers do get targeted in the way that it appears they will be, is going to find it very difficult to progress through with this rebrand.
Jack, as you say, it's a very interesting moment because MSNBC has been part of Comcast, big conglomerate affiliated with NBC, which is a relatively respectable network, albeit certainly liberal. But Comcast is spinning off MSNBC. It's going to be on its own now. It's rebranding, as you say, as MS Now. And so this is a vulnerable moment for that cable news network. In the past, I think the television networks haven't worried much about alienating conservatives because conservatives would not get activists. The conservatives just wouldn't punish them, whereas the left would. That may be changing. I mean, just ask Bud Light, ask Cracker Barrel. You know, we've seen indications lately that conservatives are willing to make themselves heard. It will be very interesting to see whether that pressure on MSNBC or MS Now advertisers bears fruit.
Yeah, well said. Moving on, though, because Comedy Central has now pulled an episode of South Park, which had featured Cartman as Charlie Kirk. Now, they went in there to make fun of Kirk, but this is how he responded at the time when the episode first aired.
Okay, everybody, the South Park episode just dropped, and honestly, it is hilarious. I mean, part of it is kind of like whatever, typical humor, but it was hilarious. Just watch this little snippet of our Prove Me Wrongs, our viral cultural domination on prime time on Comedy Central. So important, so impactful that South Park is highlighting. Watch it.
I'm sick of people stealing my stick. If anyone around here is going to be a master debater, it's me. So let's go. Who wants to debate the master debater? Let's go. You right there.
That's the stupidest haircut I've ever seen.
You are wrong. Leviticus 3:17 says it shall be a perpetual statute for your generations throughout all your dwellings. So you can shut up, baby. You just hate America and you love abortions.
Not only that, but Jeremiah 1:5, I made you in the womb. South Park gets this right. In fact, I think they've been watching a lot of Charlie Kirk videos.
John, this is why he was so effective at what he did. He had this brilliant personality where he wouldn't get flustered. He didn't take it personally. He engaged. And they set out there to mock him, and he loved every minute of it. And he promoted the show, and he said, please go and watch it. And then we did cut it off the grab, but at the end of it, he actually puts a link to sign up for my lectures here. He turned it into a promotion, which kind of shows the mind of someone like Charlie Kirk, who turned it into an opportunity. And I think that it's important to remember moments like this with Charlie, who I don't think would probably want the show to be cancelled because he was that way inclined and he was rather brave like that.
He was very brave, and he had a sense of humor. You know, he spent half his time on college campuses. He was very tuned into contemporary culture, to young people's culture, and he loved being mocked on South Park. And he was right when he said that this shows how influential our movement has become. South Park will ridicule us in this way, but what they're really doing is acknowledging our importance. And I think he was right about that.
Yeah, South Park does love to punch up, don't they? It is an acknowledgement. John, thank you so much for your thoughts and for taking the time to talk to us. I really appreciate it.